something's missing. Maybe it's the way you freeze when someone criticizes you, or how you push away happiness because it feels too good to trust. That's not a flaw. It's your inner child calling out for healing. Welcome to Jung Psyche Hub, where we dive deep into the wisdom of Carl Jung to unlock your true potential. In this video, we're uncovering hidden signs your inner child needs healing. Inspired by Carl Jung's timeless teachings, through real-life stories and practical steps, you'll learn how to reconnect with the child inside you, heal old wounds, and live a life that's authentically yours. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is your chance to take back control. Stick with us until the end to discover how to reparent your inner child and free your future. So, hit that subscribe button, grab a notebook, and let's start this journey together. Ready to come home to yourself? Have you ever felt like, no matter how hard you try, you're just not good enough? You ace a project at work, but instead of celebrating, you obsess over one small critique. You're there for everyone, friends, family, colleague, but deep down, you worry you're still falling short. If this hits home, you're showing the first hidden sign that your inner child needs healing, a persistent feeling that you're never enough. Welcome to Chapter 1 of our journey at Jung Psyche Hub, inspired by Carl Jung's profound insights. We're diving into why this nagging sense of inadequacy isn't a flaw, it's a wound from your past, carried by the child inside you. Through a real-life story, we'll explore how this feeling takes root, why it lingers, and how you can start healing it today. Let's get started. Meet Anna, a 32-year-old marketing manager from Chicago. By all accounts, Anna's a success. She's climbed the corporate ladder, runs marathons, and is the go-to person for her friends' problems. But no matter how many promotions she earns or how many compliments she gets, Anna can't shake the feeling that she's not enough. Last week, her boss praised her latest campaign but mentioned a minor tweak for next time. While her colleagues moved on, Anna spiraled. She stayed up late, replaying the comment, convinced it meant she'd failed. At a family dinner, she overheard her mum casually say, "Anna's always been so hard on herself." That comment stung not because it was mean, but because it was true. Anna's inner voice is relentless. You're not smart enough. You're not likable enough. You're not enough. This feeling isn't random, and it's not your fault. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, believed that our deepest wounds often form in childhood, stored in what he called the unconscious. For Anna, it started young. Her parents were loving but demanding, tying their approval to her grades or behavior. A B on a test meant a disappointed sigh. A tantrum meant a cold shoulder. Anna learned early that love was conditional. She had to earn it. Over time, her inner child internalized a belief, "I'm only worthy if I'm perfect." That belief became a blueprint, shaping her adult self into someone who overworks, over-apologizes, and feels like she's always one mistake away from being found out. Carl Jung called these unconscious wounds, complexes, emotional patterns that shape how we see ourselves and the world. If your inner child was taught that love, safety, or acceptance depended on being good enough, you might carry a complex that whispers, "You're not enough" in every challenge you face. Maybe you're like Anna, losing sleep over a small critique. Or maybe you avoid taking risks like applying for a dream job because you're convinced you'll fail. You might even sabotage your own success, like turning down a compliment or downplaying your achievements. Because deep down, your inner child doesn't believe you deserve them. Let's ground this in another scenario. Imagine you're at a social gathering, laughing with friends. Someone compliments your outfit, but instead of saying thank you, you deflect. Oh, this old thing later? You wonder why you couldn't just accept the praise. Or picture yourself at work, where you've poured your heart into a presentation. Your team loves it, but one colleague suggests a minor change. Instead of shrugging it off, you feel crushed, like you've let everyone down. These moments aren't about the present. They're echoes of your inner child, who learned that any flaw meant you weren't worthy of love. Carl Jung believed this sense of inadequacy is universal, but especially strong in those with rare, sensitive minds. He said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. If your inner child carries wounds from being criticized, ignored, or held to impossible standards, accepting yourself feels risky. It means facing the pain of those early moments." For Anna, it was the memory of her dad walking away when she didn't perform. For you, it might be a teacher who shamed you for a wrong answer, a parent who didn't show up when you needed them, or a friend who made you feel small. Those moments taught your inner child that you had to be perfect to be loved, and that belief still runs the show. Why does this matter? Because that feeling of never enough isn't just a thought, it's a barrier. It keeps you from celebrating your wins, pursuing your dreams, or feeling safe in your own skin. But here's the good news. You can heal it. Healing your inner child starts with recognizing that this wound isn't yours to carry forever. It was handed to you by someone else's limitations, parents who didn't know better, teachers who were too harsh, or a world that demanded perfection. Carl Jung believed that by making the unconscious conscious, you can rewrite the story. How do you start? First, name the feeling. When that not enough voice creeps in, pause and acknowledge it. This is my inner child feeling scared, not a fact about my worth. Write it down or say it out loud. It helps break the spell. Second, challenge the belief. Ask yourself, who taught me I had to be perfect? Trace it back to its roots. For Anna, it was her parents' expectations. For you, it might be different. Recognizing the source helps you see it's not your truth, it's someone else's. Third, practice self-affirmation. Start small. Tell yourself, I am enough, just as I am. It might feel awkward at first, but repetition builds a new blueprint. Finally, connect with others. Find a friend, therapist, or community like Jung Psyche Hub, where you can share your story and feel seen. Healing happens when you're witnessed, not judged. Let's look at how Anna began her journey. After that sleepless night obsessing over her boss's critique, she started journaling. She wrote about her childhood, remembering how her parents' approval hinged on her achievements. She realized her not enough feeling wasn't about her work. It was about her inner child. Still seeking validation, she began practicing self-compassion, whispering to herself, "You did your best, and that's enough." Over time, she stopped over-apologizing and started accepting compliments. It wasn't instant, but each step made her feel lighter, like she was finally letting her inner child breathe. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." Your feeling of never enough isn't a life sentence. It's a signal that your inner child is waiting for you to see them, to love them, to tell them they're enough. By starting this journey, you're not just healing your past, you're unlocking a future where you can shine as your true self. But this wound can show up in other ways, like avoiding conflict at all costs. Let's explore that in the next chapter. Do you ever find yourself saying yes when you want to say no? Just to keep the peace. Maybe you stay quiet during an argument, even when you're burning inside. Or you apologize for something that wasn't your fault, all to avoid a fight. If this sounds familiar, you're showing the second hidden sign that your inner child needs healing, an intense fear of conflict. Welcome to Chapter 2 of our journey at Jung Psyche Hub. Drawing on Carl Jung's profound wisdom, we're diving into why your instinct to avoid conflict at all costs isn't a sign of weakness. It's a wound from your past, carried by the child inside you. Through a real-life story, we'll explore how this fear takes root, why it holds you back, and how you can start healing it to reclaim your voice. Let's dive in. Meet Mark, a 35-year-old high school teacher from Seattle. Mark is everyone's favorite colleague, always agreeable, always ready to help. But last month, during a team meeting, his principal suggested a new curriculum plan that Mark knew wouldn't work for his students. His gut screamed to speak up, but he froze. Instead of sharing his concerns, he nodded along, forcing a smile. Later, alone in his car, he felt a familiar knot in his stomach, anger at himself for staying silent. At a family barbecue, the same thing happened. His brother made a snide comment about Mark's career choice, and though it stung, Mark laughed it off, changing the subject. Deep down, he felt like a coward, wondering why he couldn't stand up for himself. This avoidance isn't random, and it's not your fault. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, believed that our behaviors as adults are often shaped by wounds from childhood, stored in what he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide to feel safe. For Mark, this fear of conflict started young. Growing up, his father had a temper. When Mark expressed his feelings like crying over a bad day, he was met with shouting or dismissal. Stop being so sensitive. To survive, Mark's inner child learned that speaking up meant danger, that conflict could lead to rejection or punishment. So, he adapted, becoming the good kid who never rocked the boat. That adaptation followed him into adulthood, turning him into someone who avoids conflict at all costs, even when it means silencing his own truth. Carl Jung taught that the shadow holds not just our fears but also our unexpressed strengths. If your inner child learned that conflict was unsafe, you might carry a shadow belief that speaking up will lead to abandonment or chaos. This shows up in small ways. Maybe you agree to extra work to avoid saying no to your boss, or you let a friend's hurtful comment slide because arguing feels too risky. It can also show up in bigger ways, like staying in a toxic relationship or job, because confronting the issue feels like stepping into a minefield. You're not weak. You're protecting the child inside, who once felt unsafe expressing their needs. Let's paint a picture. Imagine you're at a dinner with friends, and someone makes a joke at your expense. It stings, but instead of calling it out, you laugh along, pretending it's fine. Later, you replay the moment, wishing you'd said something, or picture yourself in a work meeting where a colleague takes credit for your idea. Your heart races, urging you to speak, but you stay quiet, telling yourself it's not worth the fight. These moments aren't just about the present, they're echoes of your inner child, who learned that conflict meant losing love, safety, or approval. Here's another example. Emily, a 29-year-old graphic designer, always prided herself on being easygoing. But when her roommate repeatedly left dishes in the sink, Emily said nothing, even though it frustrated her. One day, her roommate snapped at her for being too quiet, and Emily apologized, despite being the one upset. That night, she journaled and realized her avoidance came from childhood. Her parents fought constantly, and speaking up made her feel like she was adding to the chaos. Like Mark, Emily's inner child learned that silence was safer than conflict. Carl Jung believed that avoiding conflict is a survival mechanism, not a flaw. He said, "What you resist not only persists but will grow in size." By suppressing your voice to avoid conflict, you're not just protecting your inner child, you're keeping them stuck. That fear of confrontation holds you back from setting boundaries, expressing your needs, or standing up for what you believe in. It can make you feel like you're living half a life, always compromising to keep others comfortable. So, how do you heal this? First, acknowledge the fear. When you feel the urge to avoid conflict, pause and notice it. This is my inner child, feeling unsafe. Naming it helps you separate the past from the present. Second, start small. You don't need to confront everyone at once. Practice saying no in low-stakes situations, like declining an extra task at work or politely disagreeing with a friend's opinion. Third, reframe conflict. Instead of seeing it as a threat, view it as a way to honor your inner child's voice. Carl Jung saw conflict as a path to growth, a way to integrate the shadow and reclaim your strength. Fourth, seek safe spaces. Share your feelings with a trusted friend, therapist, or community like Jung Psyche Hub, where your voice is valued, not judged. Let's see how Mark began his healing. After that frustrating meeting, he started small. He wrote down what he wished he'd said to his principal. Then, he practiced with a close friend, sharing a small disagreement about weekend plans. It felt scary, but his friend listened, and Mark felt a spark of confidence. He also joined a therapy group, where he learned to see conflict as a way to protect his inner child, not endanger them. Over time, he spoke up at work, setting boundaries with his principal. Each step made him feel less like the good kid and more like his true self. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Avoiding conflict might have kept your inner child safe once, but now it's keeping them silent. By facing this fear, you're not just healing your past, you're giving your inner child the courage to speak. But this wound can show up in other ways, like putting everyone else's needs before your own. Let's explore that in the next chapter. Do you ever say yes to helping someone, even when you're exhausted, just because you can't bear to let them down? Maybe you drop everything to fix a friend's problem, or you stay late at work to cover for a colleague, all while your own needs pile up. Ignored. If this feels all too familiar, you're showing the third hidden sign that your inner child needs healing, a tendency to over-prioritize others' needs above your own. Welcome to Chapter 3 of our journey at Jung Psyche Hub. Guided by Carl Jung's profound wisdom, we're diving into why you put everyone else first, how this pattern stems from childhood wounds, and how you can start nurturing your inner child to live a life that honors you. Through a real-life story and practical steps, we'll uncover the roots of this behavior and how to break free. Let's get started. Meet Sarah, a 30-year-old nurse from Boston. Sarah is the person everyone turns to her. Patients adore her. Her friends call her their rock, and her family relies on her to plan every gathering. But last week, Sarah hit a wall. A friend asked her to help move apartments on her only day off. And though she was drained from a 12-hour shift, she said yes. By the end of the day, she was physically and emotionally spent, snapping at her partner over a small misunderstanding. Alone that night, Sarah cried, not just from exhaustion but from a deeper ache. Why couldn't she say no? Why did she always put others first, even when it left her empty? This pattern isn't random, and it's not your fault. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, believed that our adult behaviors often reflect wounds from childhood, stored in what he called the unconscious. For Sarah, it started young. Her mother struggled with depression, and as a child, Sarah learned to be the good girl who kept the house running. If she needed attention, like time to play or someone to listen, her mother would withdraw, leaving Sarah feeling like her needs were a burden. To feel loved, Sarah's inner child adapted, learning that putting others first was the only way to secure connection. That belief became a blueprint, shaping her into an adult who sacrifices her own needs to feel worthy. Carl Jung called this a complex, an unconscious pattern that drives our actions. If your inner child learned that love or safety depended on being selfless, you might carry a complex that says, "Me needs don't matter." This shows up in everyday moments. Maybe you agree to take on extra work despite being overwhelmed. Or you stay in a one-sided friendship because you fear disappointing someone. It can also show up in bigger ways, like neglecting your health or dreams to care for others, leaving you resentful but unsure why. You're not a pushover. You're protecting the child inside who once felt that their needs were too much. Let's bring this to life. Imagine you're at a family event, and your cousin asks you to watch their kids. Even though you've had a grueling week, you want to rest, but you say yes. Worried, they'll think you're selfish. Later, you feel drained, wondering why you couldn't prioritize yourself. Or picture yourself at work, where a co-worker asks for help on a project. You're already swamped, but you agree, telling yourself, it's just this once. But it's never just once. It's a pattern. These moments echo your inner child, who learned that saying no risked losing love or approval. Here's another example. David, a 27-year-old barista, was known for his generosity. When his sister needed money for rent, he gave her his savings, even though it meant skipping his own plans to enroll in a photography course. Growing up, David's parents praised him for being helpful but ignored his own needs. Like when he asked for art supplies as a kid, he learned that being needed was his ticket to belonging. Like Sarah, David's inner child carried a wound, the belief that his worth came from serving others, not from honoring himself. Carl Jung believed that over-prioritizing others is a survival mechanism, not a flaw. He said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." If your inner child was taught that your needs were a burden, accepting yourself means facing the pain of those moments when you were overlooked or dismissed. For Sarah, it was her mother's withdrawal. For David, it was his parents' focus on his helpfulness over his desires. For you, it might be a caregiver who shamed you for asking for help, a sibling who demanded your attention, or a teacher who made you feel selfish for wanting more. Those experiences taught your inner child that love was earned by putting others first, and that belief still shapes your life. Why does this matter? Because constantly putting others first doesn't just drain you. It disconnects you from your true self. It keeps you from pursuing your passions, setting boundaries, or even resting without guilt. You might feel resentful, burned out, or like you're living for everyone but yourself. But here's the hope: you can heal this wound. Healing your inner child starts with recognizing that your needs are not a burden, they're a birthright. Carl Jung's concept of reparenting teaches us to become the loving parent our inner child needed, offering the validation and care we didn't receive. How do you begin? First, notice the pattern. When you're tempted to say yes out of guilt, pause and ask, am I doing this for me, or to avoid disappointing someone? This awareness helps you see your inner child's fear. Second, practice saying no. Start small. Decline a small request. Like, I'd love to help, but I need to rest today. It feels uncomfortable, but it's a gift to your inner child. Third, prioritize self-care. Set aside time for something that nourishes you: reading, a walk, or even a nap. Treat it as non-negotiable, like you would for someone else's needs. Fourth, reframe your worth. Tell yourself, my needs matter, and I'm worthy of care. Write it down or say it daily to build a new belief. Finally, find support. Share your journey with a friend, therapist, or community like Jung Psyche Hub, where you're encouraged to put yourself first without judgment. Let's see how Sarah started healing. After that exhausting day helping her friend, she began journaling about why she couldn't say no. She traced it back to her childhood, realizing her mother's emotional absence taught her that her needs were too much. She practiced saying no to small requests, like declining to organize a family event. At first, she felt guilty, but she noticed people respected her boundaries. She also carved out time for herself, starting with a weekly yoga class that brought her joy. Slowly, she began to feel less like the good girl and more like her true self, worthy of care. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." Putting others first might have kept your inner child safe once, but now it's keeping them invisible. By honoring your needs, you're telling that child they matter. You're not just healing your past, you're creating a future where you can live authentically. But this wound can show up in other ways, like struggling to feel safe with happiness. Let's explore that in the next chapter. Have you ever felt a pang of unease when things are going too well? Like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe you land a big win, a promotion, a loving relationship, a perfect moment, but instead of soaking it in, you brace yourself for something to go wrong. If this resonates, you're showing the fourth hidden sign that your inner child needs healing: a struggle to feel safe with happiness. Welcome to Chapter 4 of our journey at Jung Psyche Hub. Guided by Carl Jung's timeless wisdom, we're diving into why joy feels fleeting, how this fear stems from childhood wounds, and how you can help your inner child embrace happiness without fear. Through a real-life story and practical steps, we'll uncover the roots of this pattern and how to rewrite it. Let's get started. Meet James, a 34-year-old graphic designer from Austin. James seems to have it all: a thriving career, a supportive partner, and a passion for music. But last month, when he got a major client and his band booked their first big gig, he didn't celebrate. Instead, he felt anxious, convinced something bad was coming. At dinner with his partner, who toasted his success, James brushed it off, saying, "It's not a big deal." Later, alone, he couldn't sleep, haunted by a nagging fear that his happiness wouldn't last. When a friend asked why he seemed tense, James admitted, "I don't know how to just be happy. It feels like I'm waiting for it to fall apart." This fear isn't random, and it's not your fault. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, believed that our deepest wounds shape our unconscious, influencing how we experience life. For James, this struggle started in childhood. His parents were unpredictable: one day, warm and loving; the next, distant or critical. Moments of joy, like family outings, often ended in arguments or disappointment. James's inner child learned that happiness was fragile, that good things always came with a catch. To protect himself, he adapted, staying guarded, even in joyful moments. That adaptation followed him into adulthood, making him brace for disaster whenever life felt too good. Carl Jung connected this fear to the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of human experiences that shapes how we process emotions. If your inner child learned that joy was followed by pain, whether through rejection, loss, or chaos, You might carry an unconscious belief that happiness is unsafe. This shows up in small ways. Maybe you downplay a compliment because accepting it feels risky. Or you avoid celebrating achievements because you fear they'll be taken away. It can also show up in bigger ways, like sabotaging a healthy relationship or hesitating to pursue a dream because you're convinced it won't last. You're not broken. You're protecting the child inside who once had their joy shattered. Let's ground this in a scenario. Imagine you're on a perfect date. Laughter, connection, everything feels right. But as the night goes on, you start to pull back, worrying that it's too good to be true. You might even pick a small fight to test the relationship. Not because you want to, but because your inner child is scared of getting hurt again. Or picture yourself getting a promotion at work. Instead of celebrating, you obsess over whether you deserve it or when you'll mess up. These moments aren't about the present, they're echoes of your inner child, who learned that happiness comes with a price. Here's another example. Lisa, a 27-year-old writer, always felt uneasy when life was good. When her first article went viral, she didn't share the news with friends. She hid it, convinced the praise was a fluke. Growing up, Lisa's parents were loving but inconsistent. Happy moments, like birthday parties, were often followed by fights or neglect. Her inner child learned to distrust joy, expecting it to vanish. Like James, Lisa's fear of happiness kept her from fully embracing her successes, leaving her stuck in a cycle of self-doubt. Carl Jung believed this struggle is a survival mechanism, not a flaw. He said, "What did you do as a child that made the hours pass like minutes? Therein lies the key to your earthly pursuits." If your inner child was taught that joy is temporary, embracing happiness feels like tempting fate. It means risking the pain of loss or disappointment. For James, it was the unpredictability of his parents' moods. For Lisa, it was the chaos that followed happy moments. For you, it might be a caregiver who dismissed your excitement, a loss that tainted a joyful memory, or a betrayal that made trust feel dangerous. Those experiences taught your inner child to guard against happiness, and that guard still shapes your life. Why does this matter? Because struggling to feel safe with happiness doesn't just steal your joy, it limits your life. It keeps you from savoring successes, building deep connections, or taking risks that could lead to growth. You might push away love, avoid opportunities, or feel guilty for feeling good, all because your inner child is bracing for pain. But here's the hope: you can heal this wound. Carl Jung's concept of individuation teaches us to integrate our fears and reclaim our full selves, including the ability to embrace joy without fear. How do you start? First, notice the fear. When happiness feels uneasy, pause and acknowledge it. This is my inner child expecting something to go wrong. Naming it helps you separate the past from the present. Second, savor small joys. Practice staying present in happy moments. Savor a warm coffee, a kind word, or a sunny day. Start with 5 minutes a day to teach your inner child that joy is safe. Third, challenge the belief. Ask, who taught me happiness can't last? Trace it back to its roots and remind yourself that you're not that vulnerable child anymore. Fourth, create rituals of gratitude. Write down 3 things each day that brought you joy, no matter how small. This rewires your inner child to trust happiness. Finally, seek supportive spaces. Share your wins with a friend, therapist, or community like Jung Psyche Hub, where joy is celebrated, not questioned. Let's see how James began his healing. After that sleepless night, he started journaling about his childhood, recalling how his parents' unpredictability made joy feel fragile. He practiced savoring small moments, like enjoying a song without rushing to the next task. He also started a gratitude journal, noting things like a good laugh with his partner. At first, it felt forced, but over time, he felt safer in happy moments. He joined an online group through Jung Psyche Hub, where he shared his band's success and was met with encouragement, not judgment. Slowly, he began to trust that happiness wasn't a trap. It was his to keep. Carl Jung said, "In each of us, there is another whom we do not know. That other is your inner child, waiting for you to tell them it's safe to feel joy." By embracing happiness, you're not just healing your past, you're opening a future where you can live fully. But this wound can show up in other ways, like losing touch with your playful broga. Creative self. Let's explore that in the next chapter. When was the last time you felt truly free to be yourself, playful, creative, unburdened by the weight of the world? Maybe you've forgotten what it feels like to laugh without holding back, to create without fear of judgment, or to chase a spark of joy just because it feels good. If this resonates, you're touching on the fifth and final sign that your inner child needs healing, a disconnection from your natural joy. Welcome to Chapter 5 of our journey at Jung Psyche Hub. Guided by Carl Jung's timeless wisdom, we're diving into how your inner child holds the key to rediscovering your playfulness, creativity, and zest for life, and how reconnecting with them can set you free. Through a real-life story and practical steps, we'll explore how to heal this wound and live authentically. Let's dive in. Meet Maria, a 38-year-old lawyer from San Francisco. Maria's life looks perfect on paper: a successful career, a beautiful home, and a packed social calendar. But last year, she realized she couldn't remember the last time she felt truly alive. Her days were filled with deadlines and obligations, but moments of joy like painting, which she loved as a child, felt like distant memories. One evening, at a friend's art exhibit, Maria felt a pang of envy watching others admire the colorful canvases. She wanted to create again, but a voice inside whispered, "You're too old for that. It's not practical." That night, she sat alone, wondering why joy felt so out of reach, like a part of her was missing. This disconnection isn't random, and it's not your fault. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, believed that our inner child holds both our deepest wounds and our greatest gifts, stored in the unconscious. For Maria, the loss of joy began in childhood. Her parents valued achievement over creativity, praising her for good grades, but dismissing her love for painting as childish. When she spent hours sketching, they'd say, "Focus on something useful." To feel accepted, Maria's inner child buried her playful side, learning that joy was a luxury she couldn't afford. That belief followed her into adulthood, turning her into someone who prioritizes duty over delight, leaving her inner child longing to be free. Carl Jung connected this loss to the archetype of the child, a symbol of innocence, creativity, and potential. He said, "What did you do as a child that made the hours pass like minutes? Therein lies the key to your earthly pursuits." If your inner child was taught that joy, play, or creativity was silly or unimportant, you might carry an unconscious belief that happiness is frivolous. This shows up in small ways. Maybe you skip hobbies because they feel unproductive, or you feel guilty for taking time to rest. It can also show up in bigger ways, like abandoning dreams that light you up, or living a life that feels safe but joyless. You're not boring. You're protecting the child inside, who was told their spark wasn't enough. Let's ground this in a scenario. Imagine you're invited to a dance class with friends. Your heart leaps at the idea, but you decline, thinking, I'm not good at that anymore. Later, you feel a quiet sadness, wishing you'd gone, or picture yourself scrolling through old photos and finding one of you as a kid. Building a sandcastle or drawing with abandon. You smile, but then a pang hits. Why don't you do those things now? These moments are your inner child, whispering for you to reclaim the joy they once knew so well. Here's another example. Sam, a 29-year-old accountant, felt trapped in a life of routine. Growing up, his parents pushed him towards serious pursuits, like math, dismissing his love for playing guitar as a waste of time. When a co-worker invited him to an open mic night, Sam hesitated, fearing he'd look foolish. But the longing to play again tugged at him, a reminder of the kid who once strummed for hours. Like Maria, Sam's inner child was buried under expectations, yearning to reconnect with joy. Carl Jung believed that losing touch with joy is a survival mechanism, not a flaw. He said, "In each of us, there is another whom we do not know. That other is your inner child, holding your creativity and playfulness, waiting to be rediscovered." If you were taught to prioritize responsibility over joy, embracing your playful side feels risky. It means facing the pain of being told your passions didn't matter. For Maria, it was her parents' dismissal of her art. For Sam, it was the pressure to be serious. For you, it might be a teacher who mocked your creativity, a caregiver who called your play childish, or a culture that valued productivity over passion. Those moments taught your inner child to hide their joy, and that hiding still shapes your life. Why does this matter? Because disconnecting from joy doesn't just dim your spark, it limits your authenticity. It keeps you from pursuing passions, taking risks, or feeling alive in your own skin. You might feel stuck in a life that looks good, but feels empty. Or you might struggle to remember what makes you light up. But here's the hope: you can reclaim your joy. Carl Jung's concept of individuation teaches us to integrate all parts of ourselves, including the playful, creative child who still lives within. How do you start? First, listen to your longing. When you feel a tug towards something joyful, like dancing, painting, or even laughing with friends, don't dismiss it. That's your inner child calling. Second, try one small act of play. Pick something you loved as a kid, drawing, singing, or building something, and spend 10 minutes on it. No judgment, just fun. Third, challenge the belief. Ask, who told me joy isn't important? Recognize that those voices weren't yours, they were imposed on you. Fourth, create space for joy. Schedule time for activities that light you up, like a weekly art class or a walk in nature, and treat it as sacred. Finally, connect with others. Join a community like Jung Psyche Hub, where your creativity is celebrated, not judged, and share your rediscovered joys. Let's see how Maria reclaimed her joy. After that art exhibit, she bought a small sketchbook and started drawing again, just for herself. At first, she felt silly, but each stroke brought back memories of her childhood freedom. She joined a local painting class, where she met others who valued creativity. Slowly, she began to feel alive again, not just as a lawyer, but as an artist. Her inner child wasn't just healed, she was set free to create without fear. Sam, too, took a step. He went to that open mic night, playing a song he wrote as a teen. The applause wasn't perfect, but it felt like coming home. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Your inner child's joy isn't lost, it's waiting for you to reclaim it. By rediscovering play and creativity, you're not just healing your past, you're building a future where you shine as your true self. Let's wrap this journey up in our final chapter, where we'll bring it all together and show you how to keep healing your inner child. And there you have it, the 5 hidden signs that your inner child is calling for healing. Illuminated by Carl Jung's timeless wisdom, from feeling like you're never enough to avoiding conflict at all costs, over-prioritizing others' needs, struggling to trust happiness, and losing touch with your joy. These aren't flaws. They're signals from the child within, waiting for you to listen. You're not broken, lazy, or too sensitive. You're carrying wounds that were never yours to bear. And now, you're ready to heal them. As Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Your inner child isn't just a memory. They're a living part of you, holding your creativity, your courage, and your potential to live authentically. By facing these signs, you're not just healing your past, you're unlocking a future where you shine as your true self. You're not alone in this journey. There's a whole community of rare, sensitive souls out there, just like you, seeking to heal, grow, and live fully through Carl Jung's wisdom. So, what's next? Take a moment to reflect which of these signs hit you the hardest. Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. If this video spoke to your heart, hit that like button to let us know. Want to keep exploring your inner world with us? Subscribe to Jung Psyche Hub and tap the bell so you never miss a video. Share this with someone who might need to hear it, because healing the inner child is a gift we can all share. Your journey to wholeness starts here, and we're with you every step of the way. As Carl Jung said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Are you ready to awaken? We'll see you in the next video.